pages. We have any of the events which we do there, we keep posting it there. So you can track us there on our social media pages. So before we start off, some basic ground rules. I know the ad folks likes to challenge the status quo at large and break some rules always. But let us make sure that some ground rules are maintained. And one of the most important ground rules of webinars is you have to stay muted. And so please mute your mics as well as your videos to avoid any disturbance. And we can see the speakers in all their glory when they are doing the talk. And if you mute your mics and videos, then there will be seamless video relay which will come to you. So make sure you mute it. Just in case if you drop off in between or because of any power outages or anything like that, feel free to log on to the same Zoom call link and we will let you in again. If you have any trouble logging in onto the Zoom, remember that we are streaming this live on the Ad Club Bangalore Facebook page, so you can watch it there. Any questions what you have, please type them into the chat window and we will see how to get it covered during the course of the panel discussion. So keep typing it there. So that's it with the ground rules. So coming back to the topic, content and the speakers. What a stellar lineup of speakers we have today here. And while I'm not really getting into introducing the speakers, which the moderator of the day will do, let me take this opportunity to introduce the moderator, and it's my privilege to do that. Karthik Nagarajan. Karthik is the Chief Content Officer of Waymaker India. And we couldn't think of anybody else to moderate this panel because he's been helping brands start a beautiful communication journey, which is beyond advertising for quite some time now. And he's been playing an integral part in many a content story, which with all the Waymaker brands, which they're handling, bringing together various aspects of sports marketing, content integration, on-ground activation, and digital creative units. So prior to this, there's a lot more to talk about Karthik, but I will some bits of what Karthik is. He was with Groupam earlier, taking care of the social media as well as the content practice there. And if when he's not in his day job, he's a screenwriter and he's an independent filmmaker, and he's also the host of the Filter Copy podcast. And so those of you who are not tracking him there, please track him there. So that's it from me. Over to you, Karthik. It's all yours.
Thanks so much, and thanks to the Bangalore Ad Club for making this happen. You guys are doing some fantastic work and creating some wonderful content out there. I'm a huge fan. Coming to today's topic, if any of you are wondering in terms of what's happening with the business of content, how will this pan out? Post this lockdown, post COVID. And what's in it for marketers and brands, etc. I can't think of a better panel, simply because the people in the panel today and what they represent, right, is almost comprehensive. I'll just quickly introduce you. You would have already known who the panelists are. Firstly, more than anything else, thanks so much to all of you guys for taking out your time. So today we have Gaurav. Gaurav, of course, is the face of many things on television, but more than that, he's the founder of organizations like Oaktree and the co-founder of Commune. We also have Ashwin Suresh, who is the founder of Pocket Aces, which is a brand that comes to you in the form of different platforms like Filter Copy, Gobble, Loco, and many, many more. We also have Akshat Rathee, who is the founder of Nodwin Gaming. Easily the largest, rights holder and one of the most important players in the esports spectrum and the overall gaming spectrum in India as well. And we're very lucky to be joined by Smita Murarka. Smita is VP Marketing for Duroflex, but has also worked in many different brands and categories prior to this. And finally, we're joined by Bangalore's very own superhero, Kishan, who is the Vice President of Waymaker and heads Waymaker's South operations. Okay. Welcome, all of you, to the discussion. Firstly, I hope all of you are doing okay. Gaurav, I'll start with you. How's the lockdown treating you? How have you been doing?
It's okay. I don't really like human beings much or human interaction, so I think I'm fine with this lockdown. I have no problem. But I think some of the things that I have been advocating to people, and we've been having a lot of conversations like this, is I just want to tell people that it's not a productivity contest. A lot of people have mistaken it for that. I think it's a race for survival. I think slowly, first 30 days, everybody thought this is a bit of a party or a vacation, at least if you looked at social media and things around you. So I think slowly that is changing. I think people are realizing that the situation is quite dire. It's definitely more serious than we had first predicted. So I think now the mood is changing, the shift is happening, and I think you're going to see that in some of the content that's going to come out in the next few weeks as well. But to answer your question, I'm good. My vegetable chopping skills and my utensil washing skills are on point now. So yeah.
I think one thing I forgot to mention is you are also now an extremely famous podcast host, among other things, a show that I'm a huge fan of.
Thank you.
And you've also been quite busy for all the talk of a lockdown. You've been all over the place.
All over the place. Just not literally. You can't make an excuse about traffic anymore, right? You can't say that, hey, one's in Andheri, one's in Cuff Parade, so I can't come to both. You pretty much just go back to back in front of your computer. But also, I think it's necessity. Majburi. You have a team of 25 people at Oak Tree, and it's not just about what we can do to generate some revenue. It's also, I think, very important to just have some things that are happening that keep the team motivated. Because I think at this time, if you're just sitting around all day and, in Bombay, spaces are tight and people can get into each other's hair. So I feel like it's a good thing if, teams have stuff to do. So we've been trying our level best to put things together as much as we can. But, it's tough. It's not easy. Revenue stuff. Hardly anyone's in the market with their checkbook. And if they have a checkbook, they don't have a pen. And if they have a pen, they don't have ink. So, there's a lot of problems. But we've just been trying to keep ourselves sort of running and well-oiled as much as we can.
Or if they have both, they don't have a KYC to Paytm. Since you mentioned employees and an organization, I just wanted to quickly go on to Ashwin. Ashwin, we were talking recently, and you are also an entrepreneur and someone who's running a large organization, just like Gaurav, who are fundamentally in the business of creation. Right? How did you guys prepare for the lockdown? How are you guys doing? Firstly?
Please don't compare our organizations. His is only about 10x of mine, just conservatively.
We should compare this on a revenue per employee basis. No, but so, I think we had a little bit of dumb luck. I mean, we ended up being quite paranoid. And so quite a bit before the lockdown, we imposed our own lockdown at Pocket Aces. So across the 3 cities, across Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore, we went into work from home, about two weeks before the lockdown happened. And what that did for us was a couple of things, right? One is it helped us test this without any real repercussion. We realized in the first week that there were things we needed. There were systems that needed to be either physical machines that had to be moved from the office, or stuff, preps that needed to be done. So we were able to use those 2 weeks before the actual lockdown to fine tune those systems. The second thing is because people had settled into a rhythm for those 2 weeks, we also started to plan a lot of forward content. So we started to plan a lot of shoots we could do under lockdown. We've been studying what was happening in other markets that had locked down before India. So I think it's held us in good stead in that sense. Our HR team started focusing on a bunch of activities that we would need to do if it was so we prepared scenarios, right? We said this could be a 20-day lockdown, a 40-day, 60, 90, whatever that might be. And so they've got kind of plans for every stage of it. Now, of course, it's been, 70, 60 odd days. And I think so I think we've had the ability to kind of move directly into fully productive mode. I know Gaurav said it's not a competition of productivity, and I completely agree. I think it's, everyone's trying to show how much work they're getting done. The reality is it's a combination of keeping people motivated, like Gaurav said, as well as making sure you're bringing in enough revenue. And I think for us, the focus has been on revenue generative activities. So we've reallocated resources within the company where things were experimental or things were just kind of not really generating a lot of revenue. Those teams have been reallocated towards revenue focused activities. And so we've had a reasonable couple of months even after the lockdown.
Right. And I know, I think honestly, one of the organizations I feel Pocket Aces has been probably one of the best prepared and probably the fastest to adapt to what's going on. In fact, we did some things together as well. We'll speak about that shortly. I just want to quickly, get a word in from Smita. Smita, across the board, we've had many different kinds of clients, and I think Smita is muted. If you can just check on that. In the meantime, I'm just going to quickly run to Akshat. Oh, yes, Smita's back. Yeah. So Smita, across the board, we're finding many different kinds of clients, right? I think clients who have historically, for example, spent a lot on advertising and content in the telecom space, etc., currently are going a bit. They're playing it safe, so to say, or they're in some sort of a freeze, etc. And then we're also finding some very exciting new conversations with clients who are finding this as a great opportunity to experiment and be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to content and even advocacy, right? What are you seeing? What has been your own organization's point of view on this, and what are you also seeing around you that's exciting you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Karthik, for the introduction, and so happy to be amongst panelists who are so esteemed. So yeah, I belong to Duraflex, which is a sleep solution company, mainly dealing in mattress as a product. Now, for us, if I talk about for the brand, this situation came in very organically. So before COVID, we were trying really hard to educate consumers about the importance of sleep. But I think the Indian mentality of burning the midnight oil is great. And I think advertisers here, which totally understand that, because I think you all take pride in doing that, not sleeping and, turning it on something overnight. So this is something that the Indian society really thrived on and took pride in. Unfortunately, it's not great for your health. So for us, this situation as a brand has come out positively, organically, where we've spoken about how sleep builds immunity. So sleep is one of the key pillars of building immunity apart from diet and fitness. And we were able to take this conversation out through different mediums, digital and television, in a much stronger way than we probably could have earlier. And of course, with probably little money. So most of the content, again, you might hate to hear this, but most of the content that we churned out was really all the brainwave and the knowledge that we had gathered internally, and we started putting that out. So for us, we've really taken on to organic content, to content that's something we were great at. We had a huge knowledge bank, and it was perfect for the occasion. Therefore, we've seen a lot of results in our traffic going up on website by 4x, social media going up. So a lot of engagement has happened. So what I'd like to say to other brands, or what I see from other brands, is that it's very important to see if the occasion really relates to you, and how much connect can you draw from it very organically, because this is really not the time. And again, what Gaurav said, it applies to brands as well. This is not a competition. This is not a performance contest. You're not going to get a prize on it.
Yeah, this is not Mother's Day, right?
Yeah, both individually and as a brand. I think that the metrics are pretty similar today when it comes to content. So it's very important to really understand whether this occasion is in your space, and strengthen that further to really help people. When I say people, it's about consumers as well as internal. So the same conversation we took out internally as well, we took it to corporates, which was not seen, and it did not give us any benefit as a marketing tactic. So I think this situation will probably really bring out brands who are committed to the vision of the space that they stand in. I think today people are able to really identify the faff from reality. So if you're really pushing out communication in just a way to compete, consumers can make that out, and that's very short-lived.
Yeah.
So we are just sticking to sleep. We are not talking about hand washing. We're not talking about any of the guidelines, because I think they're much better and bigger experts to do that. So we're just sticking to the topic that we know best as a brand.
I just love how secure you are as a brand, and I think you put it very beautifully in terms of how this is not a time for everyone to go on their rooftops and talk about it, right? Just quickly moving on to Akshat, I think of all the people on this panel, Akshat, I think the only guy who's smiling the broadest is you, because your category is through the roof. By that I mean gaming. What has been your experience? How's it going for you?
I would love to say I told you so to everyone for the last 5 years who thought we were a piece of garbage, that everyone was wasting time with us. As you said, sometimes your fate is what you are lucky because you built that house next to the beach with bamboo, and then everyone says you're lucky, right? And then when the tide comes, you just float on it. Working from home on digital, on gaming, and specifically on the sector that I do, Goran, which is esports, is easy. This is all we did for the last 4.5, 5 years. We already knew that PUBG Mobile was doing well before right? It's just become bigger. I have every one of my matrices. My servers are melting down because everyone is playing too much and watching too much, and there's a limit to watch. And all due respect, Gaurav, and that's why what you're doing it. But in other people like Netflix are very passive, right? And if you watch too much of Netflix, and I'm talking dopamine effects in your brain, passive entertainment gets to you. You still want to do something. That's why you want to watch live. There's a power to live and wonderful and interactivity and doing something. And that's why gaming does better, because it's an entertainment form that is much more active for you as a category. And esports just the super one that sits on top, right? Which is the top tier of competitive gaming. That is
in fact, actually, on that front, by the way, your analogy is a bit disturbing for me because I grew up in Chennai. So house next to beach and all reminds me of the tsunami. But jokes aside, I think probably it'll be useful for the audience here today if you were to also sort of break down what do we mean by gaming, what are the different parts of this. There are different subcategories within that as well, right?
Yep. Let me see if I can go ahead and get you something. I have a small thing I prepared for you guys. One of the hosts needs to go ahead and let me do screen sharing specifically, if you can. Just right click my name and say.
Yeah, I think you're a co-host now.
Oh, I have it. Super. I'm just going to share this screen for all of you guys to go ahead and look at. And often enough, right? This will take some time to go ahead and go through. I'll run through it. Traditional gaming, right? All of us out there, everyone who's played Contra to Solitaire to Minesweeper to Candy Crush is now called casual gaming. That's a category which people do predominantly for entertainment, right? So the player type is a mass casual player. There is some luck in the game, and even if it is there, nobody really cares. There's some skill in the game. Monetization for this category is normally advertisements that you go ahead and do. You run out of energy and you watch an ad to install another thing, or just watch an ad. There's some banner floats, and you can do some in-app purchases to go ahead and do any of those activities. The valuation is pretty much of those companies on revenue, and this is typically called a publisher, and it's for entertainment, and it's a self-license, right? So these are the guys who are the Electronic Arts and the 10 cents of the world who make the games, or FIFA games of the world. And then this is not really broadcast. Like, you'll have some live streams around it, but this is not really broadcast. And there is no bot, and then it's available on Google Play as an example. And in India, after that, one of the new categories that came up was this entire category around skill-based gaming, also known as, hey, I'll go to the Supreme Court of India and I will get a license because this is a skill-based game. And these games will be games like Teen Patti or Rummy or Poker. And there'll be specific licenses that I can go ahead and do. And then there'll be punters who will get behind it. And this is fairly intellectual. I call this chess equivalent, which is there. So it's a game. It's a very strong game. It's competitive. It needs a certain bit of intellectualism to be there. And one of the biggest players in this sector is now someone like a Dream 11, right? So it's skill-based gaming where you're running fantasy on something. And again, this is not my opinion. This is what the country has decided. So it is what it is. There's a strong factor of luck because you do not control the third party's action here. So you are getting someone like India plays Pakistan in cricket, and then you're making a fantasy team on that. You're not really playing the match. So the result of the match is still not in your control, and hence there's luck. But there is a huge amount of skill that is there, because the skill is figuring out the permutations and the combinations and the metrics that go ahead and make you win. And the monetization is normally on the rake and the float of this entire thing. and you get valued on GMV and users and profitability and redeployment and whatever. And normally you pay to play, like you go pay a certain amount of money to go play this match. And normally you'll get a regulator license either from the Supreme Court or someone or from a gambling company. And it's across the world. This is a fairly regulated market as such, right? And since this is just you playing against odds as such, it's not really broadcast. You're playing on a broadcast, but your performance is not broadcast. The pot sometimes often goes and determines the price. And a good metric to do this is Google came up with its own, this is right, this is not right kind of metric. So anytime you have to withdraw money from a platform, all of these apps don't sit on the Google Play Store. You have to go off Google Play Store to download them. Whether it be the Teen Apatti app or the Gmail 11 or whatever it is, you go offline and you download an app that you have to go out and let Google download on your system. After this, there's a bigger one that together, which is called real money gaming, right? This is basically Ramu playing against Shamu for a ₹5 match of Candy Crush. It doesn't matter. It can be Candy Crush, it can be chess, it can be tic-tac-toe, it can be any kind of game. And Ashwin can go ahead and also talk so much around this. This is Loco's doing again. So this is basically a new manifestation that has come in India, and it's again doing extremely well. This is a mass casual, medium, high luck. You want luck in this because you want to be able to go ahead and create enough of a chance. So two equally placed people shouldn't be like, if you are better than me, you shouldn't always win. I should have a 25% chance of beating you because only then will I go ahead and play there, right? So the skill has to be a little lesser and the luck has to be a little more to keep it incentivized. And this is not plot, this is pot/commission. The monetization comes from there, the valuations again, GMV, users, profit, so on. And the player again pays to play some of these tournaments. And the license is currently unknown because this sector is coming up. Normally it's a derived license from either a regulator or a publisher or someone who owns the game. Sometimes it can be your own game, that's fine too, right? And sometimes this is broadcast, sometimes this is not broadcast. You can do quizzing for broadcast, how HQ Trivia did it or someone else, but there's different rules to that there. And the pot sometimes can also determine the price. And most of these would not be available on Google Play. There are some good ones that will be available on Google Play. Again, Loco is a good example of that is something available. But something like Paytm First Games will not be available on this.
Right.
Neither
Right.
like the MPL, which is one of the bigger players in this sector that sits out there. And the last one is esports, which is pretty much sports, right? It comes because it's played by professionals. The total number of esports players in the country will be 200. These will be the professionals who earn a living of playing competitive sports. Pretty much no luck. You don't want it to be luck-based. You want it to be skill-based. Again, example of if you're bowling a ball at Virat Kohli, only Virat Kohli is bad, will he go ahead and not be good enough? A general player who doesn't play cricket can't come and bowl out Virat Kohli, even if he tries really hard. There's no luck element for getting Virat out, right? His skill will always beat luck. The monetization for my sector is normally sponsorship of tournaments, of media rights, and advertisements that come. I'm a media property per se, right? And the valuation for me is again revenue and media rights and IPs rather than players, because my players actually never play my tournaments. They're free. They have to be free because it has to be fair. And I normally derive my license from a publisher, and I broadcast on TV and I broadcast to YouTube and I broadcast to those people so that people enjoy. When real sports goes away, esports still comes to play. And my pot is never determined by my prizes, and my availability is on. I'm never an app, right? I'm not a B2C company. I'm a B2B company predominantly. Yeah, so my customers remain as TV or digital broadcasters.
Yeah, and I think one of the things they really love about your business is you're in the only sport which doesn't require a federation, right? You're
of course, my federation is my publisher. He controls the game.
Hey, I want to come back to you on actually you and Ashwin both on COVID and the numbers you're seeing. But IAMI recently put out a study which had a lot of very encouraging things to say about this space. But I want to just quickly go to Gaurav and Kishan. Actually, Kishan, I'll start with you. I think it's to be completely candid, it's been a very challenging year, at least the way numbers looks for us, as well as spending looks in the market. And the primary factor in all of this is almost all live entertainment have come to a standstill, right? What does this mean for a market like India? When we're talking like an IPL is not happening or might not happen, and an Olympics is moving to. I know you're a huge sport enthusiast, especially cricket enthusiast. What does it mean for our markets?
Yeah, first of all, hello to every panelist and hi to my ad club colleagues and to all the people who have come here. Yeah, it is. See, we are consultants, right? As agencies, we are consultants, and the consultancy is based on past knowledge. And here we don't have any rule book on past knowledge on something like this. So it's an interesting and a difficult time, right? And we are as an industry, we are so dependent on passion points, right? Passion points, whether it is cricket or whether it is live games or whether it is music and films and all of that. So when you are in a situation where such a large aspect of your industry, whether you look at from an advertiser and brand point of view or from a content creator point of view, when you are in a situation where such large aspect of your industry is taken away, it is difficult, it is tough. But I think I will go back to even if I look at from a both advertiser and content creator lens, I will again go back to what is the whole base of everything, right, which brings in money to the industry, which is about advertisers and content creators agreeing that this is a passion point which can engage consumers. So in that sense, for example, what Gaurav is doing today, let's say during the lockdown, what he's doing today is exactly a reflection of that passion point which is being expressed in a similar manner. So I think as long as brands and advertisers stick on to the passion point to engage with consumers, and that passion point actually translates into different way of expression, whether it is live on a sport or like what Akshat was saying, that expression of it in a different way, it should be okay, I think. And it is, in a way, it is also good because this one of the things that this situation has taught us is to go back and rediscover our fundamentals. So, for example,
Right.
if you look at the number of brands who invest in cricket or as a large passion point, right? There are brands who are inherently on cricket, right? Let's say, for example, let's say inherently it makes sense to be on cricket, right? Versus some of the brands who are using it as only a vehicle to reach out to masses. Now, look at a brand which is inherently on cricket and what that brand feels when IPL is not around. They will find another way of expression to use that passion point to reach and engage with consumers. I think that's what I feel. So in a way, it is good because we are also recalibrating, and the fundamental to everything is what is the core of the brand and what is the purpose of the brand. Like Smita was saying, the core of the brand is about telling people that you need to take care of yourself, and sleep is an important aspect to that, and hence let me do something for you, right? So in that sense, earlier they were using cricket as a vehicle to use cricketers and stuff like that. Now they are using content. So you will find out, as long as the passion point is very core to your brand. So I think that's what
Right.
I think is the fundamental of it, right? And it is good in that way, because I think we are in an acid test where all of us are collectively figuring out. So like I said, there's a rule book. So agencies, brand owners, content creators, all of us are trying to use our collective influence to find out what is the recalibrated core of the brand or the purpose of the brand, or what do we stand for, whom do I talk to, and all of that. So that is my philosophical answer of that. But I think the Moolah talks differently. There's a large void that is created. But I hope
Right.
that void that it has created, let's say an IPL or let's say a lot of the leagues that has been cancelled, right, across the world. It also helps us to rethink of the role of that in our lives and do better things with that, right? So I think that's one way I look at it. So I look at it from a positive lens.
Right.
Yes,
You know,
it hurts, but
hmm.
it is good.
On the aspect that Kishan just mentioned, Gaurav, I just wanted to speak with you because you are probably one of the most connected people to this ecosystem, right? Both, and there's nobody better to talk about sport better than you, and also the live entertainment space, right? You've been working with Commune and you've been behind events like Spoken Fest and all of those. Are you really seeing a sort of a new normal, as we get out of this? I use that word very carefully because I fundamentally don't believe in that very well. I feel it's a bit overrated at this point, given the data that we have. But in the sport and the live entertainment industries, are you seeing a new normal? How do you think we will come out of this? Hopefully in October, November, whenever that happens. Gaurav, can you hear us?
I think you need to unmute him, Karthik.
Saval, can you unmute?
Yeah, I'm good now. Yes. So yes, good point. I think all we've been talking about till now has been sort of pre-COVID and during COVID of what we're doing. I think when you talk about post-COVID and you talk about sport, essentially. So we've been having a lot of discussions of when it'll start, how it'll start. So I don't think anyone can answer the when question right now, even though the Indian team has said that, if you have to go to Australia as scheduled at the end of the year, we are happy to quarantine ourselves for 2 weeks before we play a game. But, there's talk of no high fives happening, and there's talk of you can't use spit to shine the ball. And, there's a lot of things. So we don't know the when, but we do know some of the how of when it does come back. It's going to be completely different. There's going to be possibly no spectators in the audience, no spectators in the stadium. There's going to be all these things that are happening. People are not, it's almost, you go back to cricketing stories from 100 years ago, when it was the first time that untouchability was going away, and the last of those who were playing cricket, who had different rules. So you would have, people who cannot, shake hands with you, and they would eat separately. And it's almost like that. It's almost like 100 years ago. And, we were researching some story, and we were writing some story of a cricketer from 100 years ago who was the last of the untouchables to play cricket with everybody else. And you're like, my God, it's probably going to be like that now in 6 months when it starts. And now the issue is that with live sport, live sport is extremely important, right? We're not just talking about in terms of brands. We're talking in terms of sport as a lifestyle choice, as an entertainment choice, as a de-stressor, as something that we all sort of believe in and watch, and the joy that it gives us. And I don't need to advocate any of that. So all of that is extremely important. But what will happen when we go back is things will change, numbers will change. I'm sure you as custodians of brands will know that, people will probably come back with maybe half the money. What will happen to rights fees? What will happen to, what will happen to teams negotiating with athletes? But more important than all the money is, I think, what's going to happen to the quality of the sport. Now, never before have actually professional athletes had to sit around for 2 months or 3 months endlessly without doing anything, right? So even when they're injured, they have a program, a rehab program, right? So they're doing some recovering. Now everyone's just sitting. And sports psychologists are talking about how when you play at the highest level, a lot of it is muscle memory. So what can happen is that possibly in 6 months from now, a bowler from my building could probably get Virat Kohli out because he's probably not batted in 6 months, right? So there's a lot that will suffer in terms of quality of the sport, in terms of not just the quality of the sport on the field, but also what the viewers will be watching. So it's, this is, as they say, there's another word that I don't like is it's unprecedented, right? We have no idea what's going to happen. We genuinely have no idea what's going to happen. And it's far worse than what we can think, at least where sport is concerned. And as far as entertainment, live entertainment is concerned, here, listen, forget about concerts, forget about gigs, forget about any place where you wanted to pack people in, right? Just forget about that. There's enough people in the event business that as well who've written enough obituaries about, the next 12 months being a write-off for them. But I'm also thinking about shooting content, and Ashwin will probably jump in a little more on that. We're expecting regulations to come in, which will perhaps make shooting ad film, shooting feature film, shooting fiction, anything that has a crew beyond, that goes into double digits, forget triple digits, will just make it just prohibitive almost, right? In terms of just shooting something with the kind of regulations that will come in. If you're shooting something non-fiction, or Karthik, if you're doing your podcast where there's only 4 or 5 people, perhaps you can do yours. I can shoot Breakfast with Champions because, that has a crew of, 4 or 5 people, which a lot of people find difficult to believe, but it does. And you can probably shoot that. But I'm asking in terms of, let's say, if Ashwin wants to do his next season of Little Things, that has a much larger crew, right? On some days on set, you'll have 100 people if you include your background artists. What's going to happen to those things? What's going to happen to advertising? Are all ad films now going to be shot on Zoom? Is that what's going to happen? Because I think people have got Zoom fatigue. I think people have got Instagram live fatigue. 5 in the evening should just be called live PM now on Instagram because everybody is just live. And I said something in a team meeting 2 weeks ago and everybody laughed where I said that, listen guys, let's just keep making stuff because there will be an uptick in consumption as soon as the lockdown is over. And they said, one second, what do you mean? People are free right now. I said, no, but right now, no one's watching because everyone's a creator, right? Everyone with a phone is making stuff from a jhadu pocha boomerang up till, everybody's got a chat show now with 6 people watching. So everybody's just making. So soon, hopefully, people will come back. And now I think the last point I want to make, because I know I've just been rambling a lot. So the last point I want to make before I go off is that there will be a collective shift in mood, which I think all brands and all content creators have to be cognizant of. I think the first 30 days, everything was a party. Everybody was a Michelin chef. Everybody was like, hey guys, I made some modaks for my grandmother's recipe, right? Everybody was doing stuff like that. Now slowly, in our ecosystem, and that's the ecosystem that brands advertise in as well, and I'm guessing everybody here works in that, is that we don't have any food insecurity. We predominantly don't have too much financial anxiety, but all of that is now permeating and going up the pyramid. And it is going to start affecting people around us. Maybe not that much in Bangalore, but more in Bombay where rents are, 5x, 6x. There are people who I've spoken to who are thinking, if this goes on for another 2 months and I don't get a paycheck, I may not be able to meet my rent. Now that person is not really in the mood to consume or play or do anything. There is a shift in mood that everyone has to be cognizant of. And if this lockdown goes on another 20, 30 days, I don't think we should be making any yay kind of programming out there. Anything which is, in your face celebratory. And I think Ashwin will be able to tell us a little more about analytics there because they really, really study consumption analytics better than anyone in the business.
Wow. Yeah. No, I think that was a very interesting perspective. I did not ever think of the quality of the sport, Gaurav, until you mentioned it.
Yeah.
But contrary to popular assumption, Ashwin has been actually busy making second seasons of shows. One that we've partnered with him ourselves. Ashwin, you want to talk about firsts and how that happened?
Sure. It's funny that we're talking about how shooting may take place in a post-COVID world. We had a competitive advantage where we were able to shoot really lean and with small crews, and now everyone's going to learn how to do that. And I feel like I'm going to lose our edge a little bit. Barring a few of the shows we do, like Little Things, because it's Netflix and it has 200 people on set. But barring that, all of our stuff is very lean. So we found very little friction when it came to moving towards a very lean shooting style. Like everything we do on Filter Copy is 10-person teams. Everything we do on most of our dice shows as well is pretty small. So First is a good example of that, right, Karthik? I think it was like maybe April 5th when we decided, hey, we should do another season because we can shoot this under lockdown. And we've now started working with our talent as well, with the actors, and started training them on how to shoot. So what we do is we end up having very detailed storyboards. We have our cinematographers kind of work with them and teach them where to place the camera. So they'll do virtual tours of their home. They'll figure out angles. They'll figure out lighting. People will use makeshift lights with their ceiling lights, with lamps, with phone flashlights, whatever they can. And so we literally rehearse a shoot with the talent before we actually execute it. And so if you watch the series, if you watch Firsts, which is on our YouTube channel on Dice Media, it does not look like something that has been filmed by the same person who's actually been who's in the video. It doesn't look like a selfie shoot in that sense. So I think more and more people are going to learn how to adjust to those styles of shooting. And I think that for us, what was positive was the fact that talent is ready to work even in a situation like this. Advertisers are still looking to reach their consumers, right? So, with both Bumble and Cadbury's that were on, the partners on the show, we found that even in a time like this, they needed to use some medium to communicate, and the content marketing route, as I've always, been championing for the last 5 years, is the most effective way to do it. It's the most high return on investment because it's low cost. And we can do this in a targeted manner, right? So the other thing about First that I think works really well, Gaurav, slightly contrary to your point of view here, is that our data actually suggests that people really take to very positive and uplifting content right now. Because people, while you rightly said, it was for the first 30 days everyone was in a party, and literally everyone wanted to be master chef and run their own talk shows. Everyone was doing the Karan Johar or Breakfast with Champions type of show. Now people are starting to get a sense of the impending difficulties that are going to come, right? The economy is slowing down. There's going to be a lot of consumption is going to slow down world over. And so there is a sort of somberness to the mood in the country. You're seeing this in the addresses the Prime Minister is making, Chief Minister is making. And I think people are looking at content as a way of escape, right? So on video content, which is passive consumption, we do find that more uplifting things are doing better. We just launched a travel show on Gobble called Bazaar Travels, and we're finding that people are taking to it incredibly because they're like, I can't actually do this, but I can vicariously kind of travel through the series. And we're finding that, two other areas I'd like to talk about where we're investing, where we find there's a lot of consumption. One is actually animation, because animation as a medium is something that does not need to conform to the traditional rules of filmmaking, right? We don't need physical sets. We don't need to have large numbers of people in the same physical space. So proximity is not an issue. So we've been able to kind of completely seamlessly transition our animation channel Jambo towards a post-COVID world, and we've not actually had to change anything. So we have a series launching there on Saturday called Namone. So we've been able to kind of keep churning content in the manners that it's easy to do. Like Gaurav said, we're not doing little things. We would have been shooting little things right now as we speak had COVID not happened. But barring that, we've been able to do most of the content. The other area, is something that Akshat spent a lot of time talking about. And at Loco, we've gone through that entire spectrum in gaming, right? We've done casual gaming where you play kind of Candy Crush and those sorts of games. You can do it and win prizes of, you can win cash prizes. We were kind of the largest quizzing, live trivia game show in India with Loco. So Gaurav, who's on the call, was actually our host. And together we've kind of built that model out. Then we moved into real money gaming where we had Loco Plus, so people were actually able to put in money, which is, not on the app store. You download a separate app. And now we moved to kind of streaming and esports. So when I looked at that slide, I was just thinking the left one is Loco, 0.0, then it's 1.0, Loco 2.0, Loco 3.0. And now, we're seeing that in March, right after the lockdown started, we launched kind of our our streaming app. Now you can watch competitive esports there. Some of the best streamers in India are there. We're in talks with Akshat's company as well to work on a few things together. And we're seeing the uptick in consumption there for all the same reasons Akshat mentioned. It's competitive gaming. You can't watch real sports, but you can watch really competitive athletes, e-athletes kind of compete. We're seeing that even as more and more people spend time playing games like PUBG and even smaller titles like Free Fire, they're taking to watching other people play it in a competitive manner. So we're seeing consumption go through the roof there. In fact, my co-founder Anirudh just sent, a couple of charts this morning that tracks our progress over the last month and a half that we've been live. And the numbers are just like, it's maybe a dark joke, but it's kind of taking similar shape to the COVID graphs. It's just completely accelerating. So I think there's a number of things we can do to kind of continue to create content under these circumstances, and you have to start adapting for that change today itself.
Right. No, in fact, I was going to talk about first, but since you spoke about gaming and numbers, I just wanted to quickly bring in both you and Akshat into this. I was going through an IAMAI study on gaming recently, and those numbers were like fascinating, right? Of the many slides of that presentation, one thing that just stood out for me was, I think the number of women or rather females as a contributor to the overall gaming volume. I think that number has almost doubled. It's growing at a 100% rate compared to the month before the lockdown, right? Not just on this particular trend, but from a data perspective, what else are you guys seeing on the platforms that you guys have access to?
Akshat, you want to go first?
I always like to give case study based things, which is then, and they're always easier to like. The world is considered a better Western world is rephrased. India speaks in English, right? We're all talking in English right now. It's on, and by definition of the derivation of the English language, we look to the West for our cultural influences predominantly, right? So we look to the UK, we look to Europe, America predominantly as our thing. So our it's whether it's MasterChef or whether it is House of Cards or whether it is Extraction, which currently plays or whatever, right? So that's our influences. Our influences are not Eastern. While we might like Japan for that, we're not taking Chinese influences as such to go ahead and do. And since most of our derivation comes from the English language adjacency that we have, we often like to go ahead and take this example of the three forms of cricket which defines gaming. So there was earlier, and gaming existed and esports existed. There was hardcore gaming, PC gaming, right? And that was always considered the real gaming, not this wish-wash of a mobile gaming which is there, right? And I consider and that to be test match cricket. Very prim, very proper, has to have the right kit, has to have the right equipment. It has to have a $1,500, 1 lakh rupees PC. If you don't have it, it's garbage. So it has to be done in whites and prim and proper, and a certain number of people will watch it, right? And then there's console gaming that came along, pretty much like one-day cricket. Nobody knows where it belongs or what there. But once in a while, there will be an India-Pakistan series, which I call a FIFA launch, and everyone starts playing on that, and it'll last for a month or two, and then there's this big spike that you'll see, or Call of Duty will come or whatever is there, and then it'll go away, or it'll be some very strong people who love it, like I play Fortnite on my PlayStation, and that's fine. But it's very small as a set, right? It's still lost. And then comes this mobile cricket phenomena, which is like 2020. Everyone it's the masses that are there, right? And suddenly you see it's not India who plays mobile games. It's Bharat who's playing mobile games. It's in languages. We keep on talking about the fact that gaming has exploded. No regional language gaming has exploded. Hindi language gaming has exploded. Tamil language gaming has exploded. English has not changed. English's trajectory of what it was earlier is exactly where it is, maybe a 5 to 10% differential that we have looked at. Bharat started gaming, and that's why the content creators, and it's very deep as a study, right? It's the guys who were the very prim and proper said poo-poo to this mobile gaming thing, and then obviously there were no content creators, and this new content creators said we can't get into PC gaming. We'll be the new content creators, and whether it is right or wrong, I will be the Carrie Minati of the world, and I will go ahead and create all of this fun, wacky content. I don't know who's teaching me, but I'm going to go ahead and have fun with it. And this new genre comes up and performs really well. So, the three ways of gaming, three types of gaming on platforms is predicated by where we are. And that's also social cultural, right? So Europe which is the center of PC gaming, was because Europe played PC gaming as a social construct on LAN, on festivals. And that then translated to the PC bangs of Korea or the China big internet cafes, because it was social. In America, it was social to be console gaming, and everyone used to sit down and play Call of Duty with their own FIFA and with their mates. In India, you play with your friends on mobile, because that's your social construct of this. So when you want, which is the biggest example of gaming in India, I like to go ahead and again say, is when India plays on PUBG Mobile, and it's over 100 million people in India who plays PUBG Mobile, you hear India play. So you're like, because in your squad of 4, with the voice chat capability of your squad that is there, you'll hear, Ramu, tune khana nahi banaya aaj abhi, tu sara din khelta rehta hai. Shanti, tune ye nahi kiya. There's a kid crying, and and it's so funny. You should just go ahead and hear it. Someone should do a Takeshi's Castle of it or something, that you'll hear India play on that chat, and it is hilarious. It's so deep that it eventually became one of the largest dating apps of our country, right? So women, when you talked about, I think the biggest dating app is not Bumble, not Tinder. I think it's PUBG Mobile in our country. Imagine the power of the woman in our country, right? A gaming app that allows a girl to choose one of the 3 guys who are trying to impress her. Typical example would be the game right now. You'd spend the first minute and you're suddenly like, girl in my group, I'm going to play with her. Oh my God. Hello, how are you doing? And then you start playing with her, but you don't know who she is. Her name is, I don't know, Vixen27. And then you suddenly send her friend request, and only if you impress her, and the time to impress her is a PUBG game, which is what, I don't know, 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes before you die and you're kicked out of the squad. You have 4 minutes to impress a girl, and you send a friend request, and she accepts if she wants to go chat with you, right? And if she chats with you, then friend, and then you go online, and she teams up with you, and you spend social construct. So all of this, which is happening around gaming, is leading to this new cultural nuances of our country of saying, how do you want to go out and play this?
And in this lockdown, especially, Akshat, are you seeing the Bharat numbers sort of increase? Do you have access to those sort of numbers, or Ashwin, if you have access to those?
Yeah, I can throw 3-digit growths on everything I look at.
Yeah, no, it's uniformly
but anything
just
that is
through the roof.
But any marked change in behavior that you're seeing? That's what I wanted to get to.
People play more, people watch more, older people are playing. It is no longer taboo. In the US, one of the biggest metrics of gaming as a factor in your life became more legitimate if you played 10 minutes of Mario in your life. So your children would then, or your family you'd be much more okay with it, because you were introduced. Sometimes in your life, you would be the person who will be saying, hey, this is cool, this is okay, rather than this is an absolute abject waste of your time. And we've seen that in India happen. That penny has dropped. A lot of people go ahead and say, when Mr. Modi did demonetization, everyone was like, oh my God. And I was like, my monetization just went through the roof, because all my people now were paying me much more easier on digital than they were doing it on physical. And now this happens where even everyone plays more. I could not ask for better marketing thing. I know it sounds scary right now.
Right.
But
no, in fact, I was...
this seismic shifts happen.
The two things I want to come back to you on, but in the interest of time, I also see that it's 5 p.m. And I just wanted to quickly get Smita in on something very critical, right? As we move towards a post-COVID world, Smita, and Kishan, feel free to jump in on this. We see a lot of our clients also getting into some sort of a performance mindset, right? When I say performance mindset, I mean their immediate needs are in terms of making sure that they're reaching customers, sales numbers sort of improve, and there are probably 7-8 steps before they can even think, they can afford to think in terms of brand building, etc. Right? And those are legit reasons, and even when we look at ourselves as a partner, we are now helping them more in terms of getting their businesses on track again, and not so much just talking about the stuff that we are good at. What do you see are going to be some of the key challenges, even after we get out of this, even in a post-September world, from a brand perspective, what do you think are going to be the challenges?
See, definitely, as everyone's been talking, it's the most challenging times that we've ever seen in a couple of lifetimes, not only ours, even our generations upwards, right? So it's something that's unprecedented, it's unpredictable. I think that's where the marriage of data and the marketers or the advertisers' intelligence needs to come in as to what really works for them. So in our case, as I said, I think we realized pretty early on to stop all our performance related activity and just focus on pure content, which really helps and improves consumers. And which is very in time with their mood. So like others were saying, we are not trying to do all sorts of, it's a party kind of content right now. We did that pretty early on because the mood has become more somber. So we've done yoga nidra sessions in the night to help them sleep better on our social media, etc. So similarly, post-COVID, people are wanting to buy essential or something that supports their change. Our category, we're expecting that we are going to see a lot of replacement demand because people have spent sufficient time on their mattress beyond sleep. Cities like Bombay, Gaurav might be able to resonate with this. People have much smaller homes. And they're pretty much working out of their mattresses. So we're really looking at a replacement market, and therefore performance becomes very important. All the conversation that we've done now, we've built the brand connect should ultimately convert somewhere as a business. So to really have a fine balance, it's important not to pull the plugs off on either. Like if we completely pivoted just to performance and just did sale oriented communication, then it would really not be a long lasting effort to the kind of effort we've already done in the last 2 months. So I think it's important to transition with a balance and keep both intact. So performance, while it's going to get added, we are still going to continue the connect that we've started with in conversing about sleep. So yeah, I think it's the intelligence of bridging the gap between ROI and really building some connect with your consumers that will come into play.
Right, right. And actually, this is open to all of you. Kishan, you want to talk about the kind of conversations you're having with clients at this point, and how they are prepping for the next 6 months?
Kishan, you're muted, and this is a money conversation. I need to hear you.
Yes.
Who's got the money, man?
Okay, so what I think COVID has taught us is empathy, right? For all, whether it is brand or whether it is brand partners like agencies like us, it is empathy, right? And in a way, it is good because it has put a very clear distinction between brands who have very real purpose and what they stand for, and they do know who they are and how empathic they are to consumers and what they stand for and all of that, and the brands who are reaching there, right? So in that sense, it is important for some of the brands who've done well during COVID are the ones who are not insecure about, I want to do a marketing campaign. So for example, Tata Tea as a client who came and said, we don't want to do marketing campaign. We really think that Jagore is a good platform to activate, to help elders, because they are the ones who are probably getting affected more in COVID. So we said, we're very clear, we don't want to do a marketing campaign. We want to help. So there was no logo bada karo, all that, nothing. We said, how can we partner with NGOs? How can we partner with partners? And how do we ensure that, on the other extreme, you have a brand like, let's say, 5-star, whose only mission in life is to do bakar jodi, right? To do nothing, right? So they made, what are the different ways of doing nothing outside, right? And that's core to the brand. That is what the brand stands for. And if you use COVID to do that and bring some excitement, happiness, joy, whatever you call it, and they have succeeded. So going forward, I see a lot of brands doing this rethinking and recalibrating fundamentals, right? Of what do I stand for? What's my purpose? What's my core? Whom do I speak to? All of that. And then marry it with trends. There was a very interesting podcast which was done by the MD of Unilever, Mr. Sanjeev Mehta. He said that there are long impacting trends and there are transitionary trends. So what Gaurav was speaking about is this MasterChef in you coming out is probably a transitionary trend, versus family as a unit coming back, and or fitness as a need. These are all long-term impacting trends. Now, if brands find purpose, if brands are intelligent enough, and that's what Smita is saying, the data and the marketeers intelligence coming together to say, okay, I have found my core. I have now found a trend which is most important or around the periphery of my core. And now let me tell stories which I have never told before. And that is where content comes in. So because a lot more stories need to be told. And the typical advertising format cannot tell you more than 1 or 2 stories, because either it costs you much. We all know about the challenges on. So Gaurav, people are going to come to you. People are going to come to you to tell those stories. So if it is about cricket and if it's about the joy that cricket provides, and I know you are on Router, for example, and the joy that you brings to fans by just doing a quiz is what a brand core is to bring joy using cricket as a passion point. And that's it, right? So I think that's what is going to happen. That's very interesting because, like I said, we all don't know the answers. So it is also an exploration for us as well. So we all need to kind of recalibrate our fundamentals as well. But in the whole journey, I think who is going to benefit more? And like Smita said, everything cannot be looked at from performance angle where it is about immediacy. So it is about strengthening my brand so that tomorrow when such a situation comes, tomorrow when the tsunami comes, I am much better prepared. I have that house near the beach which is built with bamboos so that I will float, right? And that I think is the most important piece, I think. That's what I hope. So hence there's the very beautiful word which our CEO, Group M CEO used, Prashant used, saying collective influence. So hence we have to all work together and not out shouting each other or outwitting each other, but to bring all our collective influences together to help the brands win, because if brands win, money will come again and again and again, right?
No, but Kishan, in terms of stories, you're talking about sport, right? I mean, there's going to be no live sport basically for the next possibly 4 to 6 months. And with no live sport being there, I think we realized that the only thing we could do, and we were at such an advantage actually with that happening, because at Oaktree, we've only always focused on sport and story, because the live, the rights game is not something we can play. I mean, Sony can barely play that with Star. So, how can any independent player play that? So it was only about sport and story. So when we were ready to shoot our next season of Breakfast with Champions, and this lockdown happened, and we're all sitting and like, Ashwin and I spoke about this, even we did our work from home protocols in place about, 10 days before this lockdown was declared. So all our edit, our graphics, our sound, our research, everything was sort of positioned in place. And we said, all right, everybody's good to go. What can we do? And that's when we came up with Isolation Premier League, because it was a play on IPL.
Correct.
And we said, what we can do is pick up people who have, of course, played the IPL, pick up their high points from the IPL. So give people a dose of stories, anecdotes, and nostalgia. And at the same time, add a very sort of thin layer of competition and sort of gamification, because you're asking questions and everybody gets very excited. I, of course, am a very lenient quiz master. I give everybody 90%. But that said, you make sure. Yeah, so everyone gets happily involved in the storytelling of it. And I think that's what's going to happen. And I agree with Ashwin completely, where we're saying that, you need positivity right now. So even small things that we do is we never talk about a scandal that happened. When you talk to Harbhajan, you're not talking to him about Andrew Simons or Srishant, right? You're talking to him about his hat trick, or you're talking to him about when he won the IPL and the Champions Trophy in the same year, right? So you talk and the Champions League in the same year. So you speak about happy things. And I think in the next 6 months, at least all your brands who are investing in sport will just come and have to do that. They'll have to go on this entire big archive of footage. One, B, stories, anecdotes, facts, stats, trivia, because that's all you have now. You only have.
And also, I think India has not done justice to sports storytelling at all. If you look at globally versus us, it's not even the tip of the iceberg.
We started Oaktree because I looked at the figures in America where non-right entertainment is almost as big as rights entertainment.
Exactly.
And in India, it can never be the same because of cricket, because the rights fees are so high, but we can at least make a dent.
Exactly.
And slowly we're just trying to do that. We're just trying to make a little dent. So whether we do 22 yarns that Karthik mentioned, which we do with Spotify as our podcast, or if we do.
And that's the whole point, Gaurav. Whether it is sport or whether it is fitness or cooking or family or all those things, or learning, for example, right? Learning is another pivot, right? People are open to learning now, right? There are 60-year-olds who will go and learn new language or a new skill, right? These are all large pivots under which a lot of stories can be told, right? So, for example, Akshat probably, or even the gaming part can be pivoted in a different way, right? I mean, saying that, for example, more women playing is also a story of saying there is some level of equality, there is some amount of that. So it is all about that. What do you sort of tell about story? That's the whole part of it. So I think.
There's just one point that I'd like to make. I think COVID has made everything equal, and it's not about men and women that I'm talking about. It's really about content. It's become a great leveler because there were really established formats that had developed, like, okay, in a marketer's calendar, I have IPL in April, and I have the wedding season, and I have Diwali. I think all those calendars have vanished, and now really the creativity will come out pre-COVID and also post-COVID. As to, so as a marketer, I think it's quite interesting. It'll be sans money for sure for all of us, very little money. But then I think as creativity will all come out of this, with some books written on the times of advertising during these times as well. So I think we should be happy that we're able to really take out all our creative juices, because for me, I'm an optimist. I think there's good parts to this COVID as well. That's the last point that I would like to make.
So absolutely, Smita. In fact, it's probably the greatest time for all of us to innovate, isn't it? I don't think there's been a better time, because some sort of a reset button has been pressed. And as Gaurav was talking about adding a bit of positivity to everything. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking at a bit of Ashish Nehra to all kind of content that we're putting out. Right? Hey, so I'm just going to take a couple of quick questions, from what we have. Some of them are actually about a lean manner of home-based production, and I think there is actually no better example of that than what Ashwin's team has done with Firsts. And if time permits, we may probably end this session with playing that trailer. But there's one other question which caught my eye, which says, how will go vocal for local an agenda that India is going to be serious, and how is that going to impact Indian brands and how they can leverage it? Smita, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so definitely, I think, again, something that has changed. I worked for a lot of international brands before this, and most of my career was spent in global brands. Duraflex is a made in India brand which has been there for 5 decades. So I think, again, the whole push of made in India is something that's going to be important. It's good to have the focus back on the Indian brands because some of the brands were really losing out to the powers of the money of and the journey that the global brands had already taken over decades and decades. So I think again it's a leveler. It's something that's good because India does have talent in all forms and in brands too. There'll be good brands that'll come out of it and they'll be on equal competing platforms after some time. And it's a push that's needed. So it's not only India, honestly. I think the world is going to go local and that conversation is only going to go stronger across markets, even Western markets, which are very evolved, are not talking about it. So this COVID has kind of instilled a sense of fear in being too open and too dependent on somebody else. So again, not only brands, but also us individually, I think we'll make sure that at no point we're dependent on our mates and our drivers and the help. We are self-sufficient. So yeah, I think it applies to both of us equally as brands and individuals.
Wonderful. I think we'll probably take one more question before we wind up. Someone has asked, do you see any change in the way ideation, content writing, and presentation post-COVID would change, considering the mindset of consumers, and the common man's point of view? I know we spoke about feel good or real sort of a content, but Ashwin, Gaurav, how is the methodology of creation itself changing at your end? Do you want to take this question?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that we have been doing before, even pre-COVID, but we'll certainly do much more of now is we'll do an iterative test-based content creation, right? So we won't just, we won't take these big content bets knowing that, hey, I want to make a show or a piece of content about, underdog sports team. I will, test the heck out of it, understand what kind of attitudes, tones, moods that we can actually talk about where audiences care for it. And only then invest in content, leaning in a certain direction. The second thing is that, recognizing that while we will move to a world where we can start shooting and we can resume kind of physical production, the checks and balances and the precautions needed to shoot would be much easier to manage in a contained environment. So I think you'll find that obviously with many exceptions, but a large number of people will start focusing on writing things that can be shot in controlled environments, right? So using rooms and in studios versus going out in the field and having chase sequences on the streets or whatever, or anything in a crowded place, right? So you'll find that I think the quality of writing and the topics being written about will either directly or indirectly start getting affected by the change in the world out there. But I think also that from a consumer's behavioral psychology perspective, you really have to learn and understand how people will feel after that. And there'll be different cohorts as always, right? There'll be cohorts of people that have either been directly impacted by it and so feel a certain sense. There'll be people who, read about COVID in the news, but never really felt that impact beyond the lockdown for, a couple of months. So they may react differently. So there's a lot of consumer research and consumer insights you'll have to derive through testing and through iteration before you actually take those bets, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a key point, right? Yeah, Gaurav.
Karthik, I'm really worried about advertising because every copywriter writes the first line saying, as the sun rises over the bridge in Budapest, right? What happens to that? Now, suddenly you got to go do it in a room or in dusty Filmistan studios in Mumbai. But Ashwin's so right. the physical setting, what we were talking about earlier, is going to change. So much. More and more shooting out of home, more and more shooting out of lean units. I remember that the first episode of Breakfast with Champions that we ever shot, I requested Glitch to send the crew, because I was not a producer, I never made anything, so I asked them, and they sent about 8 or 9 people, and I said, well, I just need 2 of you, and the rest of you go to Starbucks and here take some money. And they got so confused, and I said, no, I don't want this. I don't want it in your face. I designed it visually to be a little different. So just inadvertently, I did something 3 years ago, which might just become par for the course now, right? You'll have to have just 3 people in your crew, or 4 people in your crew. You can't possibly have more than that, because they can't be in a physical space. So you will see a lot of change in the industry. Some of it is good because it's efficient, but also some of it is a little sad, because a lot of people will end up losing their livelihood. And just like we see in cricket, there are people who are groundsmen, there are people who are umpires, people who play domestic cricket. I mean, those are all the people who right now are affected. But I feel that in the entertainment business, as we go forward, I think it will be affected a lot more, even when this lockdown opens.
I think I'll jump into one small thing, just to go ahead and cap that off. Let's not discount the innovations that are going to happen in this time, right? Not just thought process innovations, but tech innovations that is happening. For us to go ahead and do esports, remember, we need, just like how you have in an IPL match 20 cameras, which is there. I need 20 cameras in my esports match, right? I need 20 observers. I actually had to put those 20 observers because I didn't have them here. I had to put one guy from Bombay, one guy from Bangalore, one guy from my South African office, one guy from my Middle East office to go ahead and put that down, because these were the only guys who had fast enough internet. But there was too much lag. And then there are companies that came around and that they have literally built solutions of technology. And Google's now taking a lead on it on Google Cloud, where they're going and saying, can I go ahead and do this Breakfast of Champions with 7 distributed cameras where the person doesn't even need to sit here? There are different people which is there. We are doing it on Zoom right now. Like Zoom as a concept didn't even go ahead and exist for a lot of people before this, at the way the innovation's been happening, right? And another innovation is a super innovation that is going to happen right now, is the ability to juxtapose different pieces of content together. What if there's, maybe you don't need green chroma screens between us to go ahead and do. Can we stitch you and me going and having a chat and playing a game of chess together with one screen that is going to be done? Can AI do that and whatever? And I'm not going and being bombastic about it and using AI nonchalantly. That happens. Ashwin, those things have started happening, like live chroma keying without green backgrounds is already happening. Ashwin's doing it live right now. Ashwin, I don't think I don't think you have a green, you don't have a green screen sitting in his house there.
Yeah. No, that's going to be very critical, and that those tech innovations are probably going to change the way we look at many different things, right? Hey, listen, I know I've taken more time of you than I had the right to. So thank you so much for taking the time, to all the panelists. I'm sorry we couldn't finish most of the questions. In fact, I think 3 or 4 questions are about how will we be innovative in the way we will shoot content going forward. I think the best way to answer that is just to play the trailer of Firsts. Shraval, if you're still listening, if you're still there, if you can just cue that up.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I just want to thank all the panelists, for taking the time. Thank you so much. We'll end with this trailer. Shraval, do you want to go ahead and play?
Yeah.
It's your Mac that is not strong enough. Shift to a gaming PC.
That's all right. I think people should see this right. So I would strongly urge you to look at the trailer of First season 2. on YouTube or catch the show in any platform that you have Pocket Aces content as well. Right? Great. Thank you so much to everyone. Like I give it back to you.
Yes, thanks, Karthik. If you could ping the link, if you could just ping the link of that particular video.
I will do that. Yes. Yes.
Onto the chat window for the participants.
I'm just going to quickly do that.
Over to you, Arvind. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, all the participants, starting with Gaurav, Ashwin, Akshat, Smita, Kishan, and then last but not the least, Karthik, who held the whole show beautifully. Thank you all so much for sparing your time, and it's been a very enlightening and fun webinar. And we have learned so much at the end of this thing, and I think that's what is important. And I hope all our audience have also enjoyed it. We look forward to having some more sessions in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for having us.